Hello, I'm Al Baker, and I'm here to talk about your retirement. I have been a certified financial planner for over 20 years. In those 20 plus years, I have sat down with many people to help them reach their financial goals. I learned fairly early that everyone was different, and no two people had the same financial goals. Some planned for a new house, car, boat, or even an airplane. Others wanted to help their children through college, and some just wanted to build a nest egg. But a common goal was a comfortable retirement. Almost everyone wanted to continue their current lifestyle into retirement, and many wanted to live better than they were when they were working. But I also found that many people did not completely understand their company retirement plan, especially their 401k. As a result of not understanding their plan, they did not take full advantage and were losing out on the growth that would have greatly increased the money available for retirement. So my purpose is to talk about retirement, fully explain your 401k plan, particularly the underlying investments, and give you some ideas as to how you can save and invest for that comfortable retirement without taking too much risk. We are taught from an early age that money isn't everything and that the love of money is evil. But the reality is that we need money as a tool to get the things we need and want, and we need to learn to separate our needs from our wants. We need information. We don't need a 72-inch high-definition TV to get it. That's a want. We must satisfy our financial needs: shelter, food, clothing, transportation, education, to name the obvious. I suggest that saving for retirement is a need and put that in front of our wants. Large screen TVs, luxury cars, and the latest and greatest smartphone. Those things can wait until we meet our needs. When planning for retirement, remember the others who will be affected. If you are sharing your life with someone, that person will also be affected by your decisions and should be a part of those decisions. Let me tell you the story of a friend who decided to retire from the Army after about 25 years. Here is how he tells the story. I wanted to break the news of my retirement to my wife in a positive setting. She had also had a career, but had to start over every time we moved. She also maintained our home and cared for our children when I was away for months at a time. She had really sacrificed, and I wanted to let her have the life that my career had prevented. I took her to a nice restaurant. We had a great meal with wine and dessert. I poured a glass of wine, we clicked glasses, and I set the wine down. I took both of her hands in mine, looked at her, and said that she had sacrificed so much during my career, and that I was going to retire, and she could now have her career. I asked her what she wanted to be when I retired. She looked at me, and I could see the gratitude and love in her eyes. There was even a hint of a tear. She looked at me and said, "When you retire, I want to be a widow." My friend insists she was joking. I'm not so sure. But when you do plan to retire, let those close to you know in advance. You are retired when your regular source of income stops. It may be a regular paycheck or money from your own business. When it stops, you need another source of income. When planning for how much money you will need in retirement, I recommend matching the income you had when you were working full time. You may have heard that you will only need 70% or 80% of what you earned prior to retirement. But now every day is Saturday, except Sunday, of course. You get to do all those things you wanted to do when you got around to it. Well, now you can get around to it, but it will cost money. There are two types of retirement plans. One is a defined benefit plan where the employer provides a pension and you are able to figure out ahead of time what your retirement income will be. Federal, state, and local governments, as well as the military, have some type of defined benefit plan. Many of our grandfathers have had some type of defined benefit plan also. But as life expectancies have increased, the defined benefit plan became too expensive for private sector companies. Your plan is a defined contribution plan. You and your company make a contribution. The more you put in, the more you will have in retirement. But even setting aside a large amount may not be sufficient if your money doesn't grow because it is invested too conservatively. Sometimes the risk is in being too safe. Ultimately, it is up to you to take the time to learn about your plan. Understand the underlying investments and invest towards that comfortable retirement. To repeat the slide, you, the employee, are completely responsible for the success of your retirement plan. Your company is matching 7%. That 7% is free money, and I might add, very generous. Absolutely set aside 7% of your salary to get that match. Not doing so is throwing money away. If you feel you can't come up with that much, look deep to give up something you don't really need. Carry your lunch. Eat at home more often. Give up exotic coffee and teas. Take the time to really understand how much you will need when you retire and compute what you need to set aside every payday to get there. What expenses will go away? What expenses will stay? What additional expenses do you anticipate? Travel, cruises, a vacation home. Don't forget inflation. What costs $100 today will cost between $200 and $250 in 25 years. If you haven't started yet, get started. I would like to see everyone start to save for retirement as soon as they start their first job. Procrastination is our biggest obstacle. Pay yourself first. Have that 7% taken from your pay and learn to live without it. I assure you that when you retire, you will not regret doing without when you were younger, because now you will not have to do without. Do not take money from your retirement account for any reason. Doing so is a huge mistake, as you will see in a later slide. We are living longer. When Social Security was enacted, our life expectancy was to die shortly after retirement at age 65. Now we are living into our 90s. I recommend planning to live until 99, so plan on retirement income through 99. Know how much you can afford to pull out without drawing down your account so much that it runs out before you do. Ignore those who say the stock market is too risky and characterize investing in the stock market as gambling and referring to Wall Street as a casino. These people have an agenda, and usually it is to sell an insurance product that provides them a high commission. The stock market is safe. True, it will occasionally correct and draw back for a while, but that is not a crash. Rather, that is the time to invest even more because now you are buying at a discount. If you invest in only the very safe investments, your money will not grow sufficiently for that comfortable retirement. People who do not believe in Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, or the Tooth Fairy seem to believe in the Retirement Fairy. The Retirement Fairy tells us that in retirement, we can live on 50% of what we earned when we were working. So, if you retire on Friday making $5,000 a month, the Retirement Fairy tells you that on the following Monday, you can now live on $2,500 a month. True, some expenses are less, but now you have the time to catch up on all the things you have wanted to do. Plan on at least 90% of your current earnings. Consider inflation at 3% per year. That means that if you need $4,500 a month at age 65, at age 75 you will need $6,050. At age 85 you will need $8,125 a month, and at 95 you will need $11,000 per month. When planning for retirement, definitely include Social Security as a portion of your income. Yes, Social Security must be changed to remain viable, but it will be there for you. It may not be quite as generous as today, or you may have to wait a little longer for full benefits to be available, but you will be able to rely on some Social Security benefit. Check your annual statement and realize that Social Security will increase as inflation increases. When you have reached your full benefit age, probably 67 for most of you, you can receive your full benefit even if you continue working. But delaying does have benefits. It is tempting to plan for an early retirement and to start collecting Social Security at age 62. Even though the age to receive full benefits has increased from 65 to almost 67, early benefits can be received as early as age 62. But there are significant penalties. Your benefit is reduced 30% from the full benefit, and if you do work, your benefits are further reduced $1 for every $2 earned above $18,240. Unless your life expectancy is much shorter than the average, consider waiting for Social Security until full retirement age. It may be to your advantage to delay taking Social Security beyond your full retirement age of 67. Your benefit will increase 8% per year to age 70 for a benefit of $1,860. Definitely do all the math before making the decision on Social Security. Once the decision is final, there is no redo. To recap the 3 previous slides, if your Social Security monthly benefit is $1,500 per month, your full benefit at age 67 is $1,500 per month. Your reduced benefit at age 62 would be $1,050 per month, unless you worked, in which case it would be even less. Or your deferred benefit, if you waited until age 70, would be $1,860 per month. This year, the most you can contribute to your 401k is $19,500 unless you are 50 or older and then can make up catch-up contributions. Obviously, for most of us, $19,500 is too much of a stretch. But if retirement is closing in and we are behind, working extra or part-time may be a way to catch up on retirement savings. It is better and easier to work part-time now when you have the energy than to have to work into retirement. You have a very generous employer who contributes 2.5% of your base salary and matches your contribution up to 7% of your base salary. Everything contributed by your employer is free money. Not contributing the full 7% on your part is throwing money away. Before going any further, I want to explain the time value of money. Money, like people and plants, will grow if properly nourished. We grow money by constantly adding to it, preferably monthly, a system referred to as dollar cost averaging. Put aside the same amount every month. The earlier you begin, the more you will have at retirement. This chart is based on an average annual rate of return of 8.5%. To achieve this return would require a mix of stock mutual funds and bond mutual funds. If you start at age 25, put away $100 a month, you will have invested a total of $48,000, and at age 67 you should have $484,000 plus dollars. If you start at age 35 and put away $133 a month, you will still have invested a total of $48,000, and now you will have $265,000. If you wait until age 45, if you put away $200 a month, you will still have invested a total of $48,000, and now you will have just shy of $155,000. Dollar cost averaging refers to the process of saving the same amount every payday or every month. Investing in stocks or stock mutual funds recognizes that the prices of stock shares or mutual fund shares fluctuate. Dollar cost averaging takes advantage of these fluctuations. In our example, the mutual fund share price is $10, and in January we buy 10 shares for a $100 investment. Prices decreased, but we stay the course, and our $100 buys 12.5 shares in February. In March, the shares take another dive, and we may be thinking of bailing out to prevent further losses, but we continue to stay the course, and our $100 buys 20 shares. Things are looking a little better in April, with share prices at $7. We buy 14 plus shares. Things are almost back to normal in May, and our $100 buys 11 shares. And in June, prices are back to where we started. We have invested $600, but now own almost 80 shares. We have a capital gain of $179. Although this is a simple example, this is how dollar cost averaging works for us over time. This is an illustration of your 401k at work. The base salary is arbitrary, but provides a good picture of how it works for you. The basic company contribution of 2.5% adds $1,500 annually. If you and the company both contribute 7%, you have contributed only $4,200 for the year, which is only $350 a month. But you have a rate of return on your money of over 150%. Compare that to the 1 or 2% on bank savings certificates. As you read this slide, remember that you are only contributing $350 a month. The company contributes all the rest. So how does your money grow? Your annual contributions total $9,900 a year, or $825 per month. Remember, you are contributing only $350 a month. Invested at 8.5% annual rate of return, which should be relatively easy to get if you invest in stock mutual funds and bond mutual funds. In 30 years, you'll have over $1.3 million. 25 years, over $850,000. 20 years, over $500,000. 15 years, almost $250,000. And in 10 years, $156,000. Borrowing from your 401k is a huge mistake. This is not a slush fund, it is your future. Never, never take money out for any reason, no matter what the emergency. Borrowed retirement money is almost never fully paid back and not only reduces your retirement funds, but subjects you to early withdrawal penalties from the IRS. The illustration here looks at taking out half of the money that you have contributed the year after you have contributed that money. If you do that for 30 years, you're going to lose $290,000. 25 years, $181,000. 20 years, $110,000. 15 years, almost $64,000. And in 10 years, you will have lost $33,158. Again, taking money from your retirement plan is a grave mistake. In this illustration, you are taking back what you put in the prior year, leaving only the company contribution. You are giving up all of the growth over how many years to retirement. Remember also that the money lost would continue to grow through your lifetime. So in 30 years, you will have lost over $500,000. 25 years, over $333,000. 20 years, $221,000. 15 years, $127,000. And in 10 years, you would have lost $66,315. This picture shows the two parts to retirement planning. We accumulate retirement funds over time using dollar cost averaging. At retirement, we begin using those funds to live on during retirement. That is the distribution phase. If we start accumulation by the time we are 35 and save that $350 a month until we are 67 and ready to get full Social Security benefits, we could accumulate $1,650,000 at age 67. During accumulation, we have invested for a return of 8.5%. Now that we are retired, we will continue to invest, but much more conservatively for a return of 4.5%. That $350 a month we did without for 32 years will now provide us an income of $103,000 a year or $8,500 a month for the rest of our lives. We will have to pay taxes on that income, but there will be no withholding for Social Security, and the Medicare premiums will be paid from our Social Security check. These are the mutual funds available in your 401k plan. These are all solid mutual fund companies with very reasonable management fees. They are the Transamerica Partners Money Market Fund, Dodge & Cox Income Fund, the Transamerica Partners Institutional Stock Fund, the Transamerica Partners Large Growth Fund, the Transamerica Partners Mid-Value Fund, the Royce Pennsylvania Mutual Investment Fund, American Funds Euro-Pacific Growth, and BlackRock LifePath. As we go through the mutual funds available to you through your retirement fund, you will see some terms repeated. I will explain those terms now. The objective is how the fund plans to make money. In the Transamerica Partners Money Market Fund, the fund intends to earn the same returns as that of the long-term Treasury rates, usually 20 and 30-year Treasury bonds. These are bonds issued by the U.S. government and are considered risk-free. The 30-year bond is currently paying about 2.75% annually. There is a slight risk in that as inflation increases and interest rates rise, the value of the fund may decrease. That brings us to volatility and risk. Volatility and risk go hand in hand. Volatility is a measure of how much a fund tends to rise and fall in price. Risk is uncertainty about whether a fund will decrease in value and how much that decrease will be. The more volatile an investment, the greater the risk that at some time its value will decrease. We cannot influence the volatility of a fund, but we can manage risk by how we invest in the funds. Earnings are tied to the objective and are how the fund earns money. In this fund, because it is invested in short-term money market instruments that only earn short-term interest rates, the return is relatively low. The return, measured in annual percentage rates for 5 years, was 0%, and for 10 years was 1.28%. This is due to the low inflation and low Treasury rates over the past years. Since interest rates are rising, the return of this fund should increase. The fund's operational expense ratio is 0.8%. This is a measure of how expensive the fund is to operate and is an important number since every dollar that goes toward operating a fund is money that is not invested for you. I am calling the expense moderate, but considering the low rate of return, I feel that the expenses are too high. Generally, as we look at expenses, we want to see them below 1% whenever possible, depending on the type of investments. Some expenses necessary to pay for the costs associated with managing any business, property, equipment, and personnel expenses. The Dodge & Cox Income Fund invests in high-quality corporate bonds. These are bonds issued by large, well-managed companies to raise money, and there is a high degree of certainty that the loan, secured by the bonds, will be paid back. The objective is high current income and the risk is low to moderate. Earnings are achieved through the interest paid by the bond, usually twice a year, and capital gains, which is a new term. Capital gains are earned when an investment is sold for more than the purchase price. When we invest in stocks, we do so on the belief that the price of the stock will increase in value over time. Bonds, even though the investment objective is to earn income, may also increase in value. For instance, if you purchase a bond for $1,000 and it is paying an interest rate of 4%, you will receive an interest of $40 a year. If interest rates drop to 3%, your bond will continue to pay you $40 a year, but will increase in value and will be worth more than the $1,000 you paid. However, if interest rates rise to 5%, then your bond will decrease in value, although it will continue to pay you that same $40 per year. But any bond held until redemption will pay the full $1,000. The return is a respectable 4.97% over 5 years and 5.47% over 10 years. The operating expenses are below 0.5%, placing them in a category of low. The Transamerica Partners Institutional Stock Index Fund invests in stocks of large and medium-sized companies. Its objective is to match the S&P 500, another new term. S&P is Standard & Poor's, a company that evaluates and publishes reports on other companies. The 500 is 500 U.S. companies that make up a sample, also called an index. The most popular index is the Dow Jones Industrial Index, which is made up of a sample of 30 companies. Of the two, the S&P 500 provides a slightly more detailed picture of the activities of the stock market. In attempting to match the S&P 500, the fund will attempt to attain the same or better return than the S&P 500, but with fewer stocks. The fund earns money through capital gains. That is, it will sell stocks when the sale price is more than the purchase price, and the fund manager believes that the price has risen as far as it can. Earnings are also due to dividends, again another new term. Dividends are paid to owners of shares of a company's stock as a part of the company's earnings. When a company earns money, some is reinvested in the company, and some of its earnings may be paid out to its investors in the form of dividends. When looking at returns, keep in mind that our calculations for your retirement fund were based on 8.5%. The 5-year return on this fund was a very respectable 14.15%, 5.65% higher than our 8.5%. And over 10 years, which included a recession, it still earned 7.74%. Expenses are low at 0.3%, much less than our 1% benchmark. Transamerica Partners Large Growth also invests in stocks of large U.S. companies. This fund has an objective of growth, which means that it will concentrate on companies that are still growing and are probably younger companies. Think Google, Facebook, and Amazon. Younger, growing companies provide substantial capital gains, but can be volatile. Older companies such as General Motors, Ford, and even Microsoft and Apple, which are approaching middle age, having their start in the early 80s, may not provide as much in capital gains, but do pay dividends and reduce the volatility and risk in the fund, which here is moderate. Earnings are both capital gains and dividends, with the emphasis on capital gains. The return is slightly less than the previous fund, which was 14.15% and 7.74%, and the expenses are high, well above our 1% benchmark. Transamerica Partners Mid-Value Fund invests in stocks of smaller companies than those of the previous funds. These companies are worth between $1 billion and $20 billion, so obviously smaller is a relative term. Companies in this category tend to be still growing, so you can see the fund is investing for growth and earning capital gains as the stock prices increase. Volatility and risk is moderate to high. This is usually the case with smaller companies. However, as you can see, the return is also high. There is a relation between risk and return. As a rule, higher risk generates higher returns. It is up to the individual to find the most comfortable balance. The 5-year return is a very respectable 15.08%, and for 10 years, 8.71%. Both returns are higher than the previous two funds that invested in large companies. The expenses are high, 0.25% above our 1% benchmark, so there is a trade-off of risk versus return versus expense. Since the fund does generate a high return, the additional expense may be acceptable. Royce Pennsylvania Mutual Investment Fund invests in stocks of small companies for long-term growth. So right away we know that volatility and risk will be high, which they are. The return over 5 and 10 years is an acceptable 11.64% and 8.17%, but is less than the Transamerica Partners Mid-Value Fund we just looked at. Expenses are moderate, slightly below our 1% benchmark, and definitely acceptable for a fund investing in small companies, since there is more work attached to searching out small companies that look like they are on a path to survive and grow. American Funds Euro-Pacific Growth R3 invests in stocks of foreign companies. The objective is long-term growth through realizing capital gains as the stocks of the companies increase. Volatility and risk are moderate to high, which is the case with foreign companies, since there are unique characteristics to foreign countries that do not affect U.S. companies. Some risks include the stability of the currency of the country, government intervention and regulation, and the type of government. The return seems modest at 6.43% and 7%, but foreign companies may not track with U.S. companies. You can expect that when the U.S. stock market pulls back, foreign companies will do better. Expenses of foreign funds tend to be high, so the expense ratio of 0.83% is certainly acceptable. For those of you that do not feel comfortable in selecting the appropriate mutual funds or do not have the time to devote to studying the options, then BlackRock LifePath Institutional Fund is the fund for you, for it makes the selections for you. BlackRock LifePath Institutional is really 9 funds. This is a target date fund, called that because you target the year you are considering retirement. Every 5 years, as the target approaches, the fund becomes more conservative to preserve what you have and minimize the effect of a downturn in the market. As you can see, the fund invests in a combination of investments. The mix will change over time to reduce risk and volatility as your retirement target gets closer. The objective is to invest for your retirement income. Volatility and risk is low to moderate. The expenses are very low at 0.10%. The target dates run from 2020 through 2060. This chart shows the 5-year return and the return since the fund started for 2020 through 2060. For example, if you are 40 and want to retire at age 65, then you would choose the target date fund that comes closest to that day, either the 2040 target date or 2045. The advantage of target date funds is that the investment decisions are made for you by managers who are expert at what they do. The disadvantage is that because they tend to be conservative, you may not get the growth you need, as you can see in the 5-year returns. However, if you do not feel comfortable making the decisions, then the target date funds are for you. The fund choices you make depend on how long you have before you retire and your tolerance for uncertainty, also called risk. I wish there were a better term than risk because it sounds as though you are taking a chance that is unnecessary. The risk, however, is minimized by time. The longer you have to retirement, the more risk you can afford. True, the stock market will take a downturn or 2 or 3, but it will always come back stronger. That is why we use dollar cost averaging and don't stop saving when the stock market corrects. How tolerant you are of uncertainty will define your risk tolerance. Are you a conservative investor? If you are a conservative investor, you want to keep risk as low as possible. The disadvantage is that it will take more money invested longer to meet your retirement goals. Inflation and taxes will tend to eat up any gains you may realize. The advantage is that you have minimized any risk. Are you a moderate investor? If you are a moderate investor, you invest in stock funds knowing that stocks will give off income from the company's earnings, plus the stocks will increase in value over time, keeping ahead of inflation. Are you an aggressive investor? If you are an aggressive investor, you tend to be 100% in stock funds, particularly those of small companies that may hit it big or go bankrupt. The returns tend to be high, but the downturns can be severe. An aggressive approach is appropriate for those that understand and accept the risk. Asset allocation is the term used to describe how you divide up your money in your retirement fund. We do this to diversify so that one type of investment is not doing well, its poor performance will be offset by the other investments. If you are a conservative investor, here is a start point for the conservative investor. It may or may not fit your needs, but it's meant to give you a place to start. In this example, 30% is in a money market fund, shown in pink, which is much like a savings account with almost no risk. 25% is in an income fund, shown in green, which is invested in high-quality corporate bonds at low risk. 25%, the mustard color, is invested in large companies that are expected to grow and also produce dividends. The risk is moderate. 5%, shown in black, is in small and mid-sized companies. The risk is moderate to high, but we have only a small amount invested so that we will see benefit as the fund grows, but will minimize losses if the fund loses. 15% in beige is invested in foreign companies. The risk is also moderate to high, but we want to be able to take advantage of the growth of foreign companies. As a moderate investor, consider decreasing the income-producing investments in favor of growth. The money market fund, this time in the mustard color, is reduced from 30% to 20%. And the income fund in brown is also reduced from 30% to 20%. Large stocks in green are increased from 25% to 35%, and small and mid-sized companies in black are increased from 5% to 10%. We have maintained foreign funds in beige at 15%. As an aggressive investor, you might consider minimizing income-producing investments to 10%. Here the money market and income funds in yellow and green are reduced to 5% each. 50% is invested in the large stock funds, shown in brown, and up to 20% is invested in small and mid-sized companies, shown in black. We are keeping 15% in stocks of foreign companies, again in beige. I would like to point out that if you consider yourself an aggressive investor, then you should understand the nature of stocks and stock investing. Specifically, that individual stocks, as well as the entire stock market, can drop without warning. Anyone who claims to be able to predict market behavior is either a fool or a liar. Being aggressive means having the time to recover from a market downturn and at the same time buying stocks because they are now on sale as their value has dropped. As you approach retirement, consider transitioning from aggressive to moderate, or at least moderately aggressive. These figures are to show the difference between conservative, moderate, and aggressive investing. I can't predict the future, but I can predict that if you invest in your future, you should come close to or even pass these numbers. The BlackRock LifePath funds blend time and risk so that the closer you come to retirement, the less risk of loss. LifePath 2020 is low risk and consequently a lower return than 2050 and 2060, given that the 2060 fund will mature in 42 years. All funds are rebalanced daily, which means that the asset allocation will not change until the investments are adjusted to reduce risk, so that in 30 years, the 2060 fund will look like the 2030 fund looks today. The 2090 fund will look like the 2060 fund looks today. The previous slide on BlackRock LifePath mentioned that the funds are rebalanced daily. What is rebalancing? It is keeping the same percentage of investments that was originally established. But over time, the stock market will throw your plan out of the balance you began with. It isn't practical for an individual investor to rebalance daily, but I do recommend you consider it annually, but no more than twice a year. In the picture, we start out with an allocation of 25% each of large company stock funds, small company stock funds, international company stock funds, and a mix of cash and bonds. By December, our investments are out of balance. Large company funds are up to 40%, small company funds are up to 30%, international companies are down to 20%, and cash and bonds are down to 10%. So we need to rebalance. We shift 15% from the large company stock funds and 5% from small company stock funds, 15% to cash and bonds, and 5% to international funds. Early in the year, probably about the time we start doing our taxes. Next December, we check our balance again and adjust as necessary. At retirement, depending on company policy at the time, you may leave your retirement funds with whatever investment company has the account. It may be BlackRock or it could be some other company. I recommend that you consider transferring your plans to an IRA. An IRA is an individual retirement arrangement with the government, and IRA is also an individual retirement account with an investment company. An IRA provides flexibility in that you have many more choices of investments. You have complete control. You decide how your IRA transfers upon your death, and with thoughtful planning, you can assure that your benefits are available to your beneficiaries for many years. It is important to know how to avoid any rollover penalties when you are changing employers or retiring. Realize that the money in your retirement plan has never been taxed. When you take it from your account, whether a 401k or IRA, it will be taxed at your marginal tax rate. There are also penalties associated with taking money out before a certain age. For a 401k, if you are retired and at least 55 years old, there is no penalty, just taxes. For an IRA, the age is 59 and a half. If you elect to take the money from your 401k, the IRS wants 20% withheld. If you reinvest to an IRA or another 401k within 60 days, there is no 10% penalty. However, you must replace the entire amount. If you redeemed $100,000, $20,000, 20%, would be withheld, leaving you with $80,000. If you return or reinvest within the 60 days, you must replace the entire $100,000. If you just replace the $80,000, you will pay taxes on the $20,000, even though it was withheld. Now, if you are saying that is not fair, I agree, but that is the way it is. Now, if you do a trustee to trustee rollover from the company or trustee that holds your 401k to the company or trustee for an IRA, there is no 20% withholding required. Once you have established an IRA, you can redeem funds without withholding. Although, since taxes will eventually come due, you may want to voluntarily withhold 10% to 15%. Beneficiary designation is an area that causes a lot of grief because it is neglected. Your retirement accounts are not passed on through your will and are not subject to probate. When you initially sign up for your plan, you make a beneficiary designation. But our lives change. You may have been single when you started and designated parents or siblings. Now you are married with children. If you die without updating your beneficiaries, the original beneficiaries will receive the proceeds from your retirement plan. So make sure that your beneficiary designation is up to date. If you are married, your spouse can transfer your plan to his or her IRA. You may have children or grandchildren that, with good planning, can stretch that money for a good long time. Different investments react differently. By investing in more than one type of investment, you increase your return and decrease your risk. U.S. company stock funds will react to whatever is going on in the world differently than foreign company stock funds, and both are different from bonds. Returns from large companies will be different from small companies. Some companies provide growth while others do not grow but pay dividends. Stocks of some companies are bought by fund companies because their value is greater than their stock price suggests. By investing in a variety of mutual funds, you offset the downside of one with the upside of one or more others. So, diversify, diversify, diversify. Now, I have talked a lot about mutual funds as though you all understand mutual funds. For those that may not have a full understanding, let me explain using stock mutual funds as my example. A stock mutual fund is an investment company that combines the funds of investors like you and then invests that money in stocks of many companies. There is no set number, but typically a mutual fund may hold stocks of 100 different companies. As a shareholder of the mutual fund company, you own a part of each of those 100 companies. The advantage is a word you have just heard: diversification. By holding just the stock of one company, you are at risk that one company could fail. But by holding stocks of 100 companies, even if one does fail, the other 99 will more than make up for that one company. Warren Buffett is one of the richest men in the world. In the United States, he is next to Bill Gates of Microsoft and Jeff Bezos of Amazon. He began investing in stocks in his teens and went on from buying stocks to buying companies. What he means here is that when things are not going well, such as the stock market is declining and your investments are decreasing in value, that is the time to buy more. Most people, when their investments decrease, sell what they have to avoid further losses. Those same people hold off buying until long after the market has recovered. As a result, they tend to buy stocks or stock funds when the prices are high and then sell when the prices are low. Not the way to make money. Rather, when the market is down, buy stocks and stock funds because now they are on sale. Don't buy high and sell low. Buy low and sell high. As you plan for retirement, consider more than just money. What will retirement mean for you? Your own business? More time with your family? A chance to do those things you thought about for years? What I really want you to take away from this talk is that only you can guarantee your success. If you are not participating in the company's 401k plan, sign up today, not later than tomorrow. Understand the investments and invest accordingly. Study investing. It isn't difficult. Let the library be your investment advisor. There are plenty of easy-to-read books and magazines. Do not get discouraged. It takes time for investments to grow, but they will grow. Do not take money from your plan, no matter what the emergency. If you are participating, can you increase your contribution? Or should you open an IRA in addition to your retirement plan? You can. Doing with less now means having more later. And when you are retired, you'll be really glad that you did without when you were young. I want to repeat something I heard in a seminar some years ago that left an impression on me. There were three questions. Question one: if you knew you had exactly 10 years to live, what would you do differently from what you are currently doing? Question two: if you knew you had exactly 1 year to live, what would you do differently from what you are currently doing? And question three: if you had exactly 24 hours to live, what would you regret most that you hadn't done? You won't really know how successful you have been until you are retired. Hopefully, about a year after your retirement, you will be able to declare success. How will you measure success? Here are some suggestions. Do you have enough money to continue your pre-retirement lifestyle without drawing down your retirement savings so that your money runs out before you do? Are you debt-free? Is your mortgage paid off? Are all your credit cards paid off? Have you reduced your credit cards to just one or two that are paid off every month? Are you able to do all those things you had dreamed about over the years? Have you planned for getting old? It happens to all of us. And most important, are you having fun? Thank you for watching. Now get out that company retirement plan and get to work.